appreciate it if you do so. Roll call the board.
Ms. Strong? Here. Ms. Quintero?
Present.
Ms. Hernandez?
Present.
Mr. Hadamir?
Present. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Strong?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Ms. Hernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Hadamir?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye. Next on the agenda is board comments. Ms. Dawn.
I'm just excited to hear all the things that Mr. Holmes will be talking about because our students have been doing some incredible things and they're being known throughout the district, throughout the state. So that's really neat. So right now they're having a concert for middle school kids and the music is so important in our community and to have these concerts in the evenings and fill up all the auditoriums and the cafeterias is really neat. So I know it's an exciting time for everybody with all the competitions and everything that we are present and winning. So,
Yeah, so our kids have been, they're like famous in the
Oh, yeah?
Ward 5 calendar, in the safety calendar. A lot of our students were selected, and they were presented certificates at the mayor and council meeting the other night. And yes, a lot of soccer players, Super Sunnyside soccer team is on its way. And so congratulations to everyone who's playing right now and everywhere. And there was one more, but I forgot. So that's it for now.
Ms. Hernandez.
I know.
To piggyback on a lot of our students are doing great work as well as our staff. I was having a conversation with Theirs in a Bar Foundation. They're donating voting booths and iVoted stickers and also the ballot, but they had a lot of great things to say about our teachers who are currently in the We the People program. So I was really happy to hear that.
Mr. Hadamir.
Yes, kudos. Thing. Just a quick question. I'd just like to ask Mr. Holmes if we have a contingency plan in case somebody comes down with a coronavirus in our district. How are we gonna? What are we gonna do? What kind of, I'm looking at you, Mr. Stay on that side.
I believe that's actually out of order right now.
Okay, yeah, but that's something that
This
I've been
comments,
thinking about, yeah.
But you can do that in the,
Yeah,
new
the
agenda
end.
items. At the end.
thank you.
Hopefully we
Just
won't
remind me,
need
okay, Ms. Quintero?
Sure.
suggestions, at the suggestions.
I would like to echo what Ms. Dawn started about our kids doing great things within the city, within the district, and within the state, but also even out of state, because we had the ISTEM students, I think it was in Tennessee, where they got some notoriety. So
Nashville.
I won't try and spoil what Mr. Holmes has to say.
Thunder.
So, Mr. Holmes.
Yes,
Tell us.
you got it with pictures.
Pictures, yeah.
Thank you.
President Crouch, members of the governing board, members of the audience. So we do have our soccer championship tonight. Our Sunnyside High School soccer boys team is playing at Mountain View High School. They're playing against Carl Hayden, I believe. Number 1 against the number 3 seed. So we've got, they're seeking their 5A state championship. I'm trying to say get updates on the scores. They start at 6 p.m. So we'll hopefully know before we finish the meeting today.
We might take a recess.
We may have to, I know I have no live stream here, but great group of kids though, and great coach, Casey O'Brien. So thank you, coach. We also have, there's Mr. Crouch, a precision manufacturing program makes front page news. This was, again, Desert View's school's precision manufacturing program was featured in the front page of the Tennessean newspaper earlier this month. Mr. Gutierrez and 28 students were in Nashville and toured Peterson Tool, worldwide leader in special cutting tool solutions. And again, our students probably impressed them all with their knowledge of all those tools that they use routinely. We have a counselor highlight. Shout out to Miss Judy Rubin, Desert View High School counselor, was selected as Youth of Their Own Liaison of the Year. Ms. Rubin has been the liaison for DV for 4 years, and she facilitates access to the program for students and will be recognized on March 3rd at the annual Yodo Spring Luncheon. So congratulations, Ms. Rubin. We had Valentine's for Vets to close out Love It Reading Week and celebrate Valentine's Day. Los Amigos Tech Academy students made Valentine's Day cards for veterans and hosted an assembly to present them to each of them. Ms. Cassandra Becerra, and the community liaison for Congressman Raul Grijal's office, representing his office. We had many veterans there. I know Mr. Crouch and Mr. Jaramillo were there present as well, and were part of the honorees that we had there. So thank you for your service and being part of the wonderful presentation. Sunnyside, here's another, wins its 33rd wrestling championship. That's 3-3, not 3, or it's not a mistake. Sunnyside High School wrestlers scored an incredible 277.5 points to win the Division II state championship held in Prescott. So they're claiming their 33rd state championship. I believe we had 6 individual state title wrestlers as well. So that strong legacy of champions continues there. And we have our Poetry Out Loud. So in 2020, Poetry Out Loud competition results are in. First place was Fernando Gonzalez. I Am Offering This Poem by Jimmy Santiago Baca, and Life by Edith Wharton. The participants gave inspiring and Nusan performances. Fernando represents Sunnyside at the Southern Arizona Regional Finals at the University of Arizona Poetry Center on Saturday, February 29th at 1 p.m. So that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is call to the audience. Joe Barbosa.
Hello, everybody.
Good afternoon.
First thing I want to mention is I want to thank the board for watching over Mr. Holmes while I was convalescing, so make sure he was staying straight. I'm here tonight to talk about a special program that I'm excited about. Ms. Dong mentioned about the importance of our music program. We're going to start, as a club first, try to institute a Tejano program. This is going to be a little bit different than from the mariachi programs as well, because it's going to not only it's going to have a performance aspect of it, teach the students how to play Tejano music, but it's also going to include the history of it. It's also going to have a second component where we're going to teach them how to engineer recordings. And I'm thankful to Jose Carvajal, who's with us tonight, who has a recording studio, is going to work with us on this project as well. There's going to be a third component. We're going to teach the kids how to do promotions, how to promote concerts, dances, so forth, how to write proposals, how to interact with the businesses, how to ask them for money for a concert and so forth, how to arrange flyers, the whole 9 yards. The students can participate in one aspect if they want to, or they can participate in all 3. So, and the goal is for this program to be self-sustaining as a club, and eventually, hopefully, it can be self-sustaining as a class offer later on as well. The other thing, along with this line, is too, Mr. Holmes and I gave me permission to start working on some Tejano concerts with big-time organizations. The first one we look like, artists I should say, first one we're looking at is Alberto Gallegos. He has a 3-component concert he can do with an acoustic show, mariachi show, and also a Tejano show as well. And he's willing to work with us, and he's also been willing to work with us, being one of the vocal coaches for this Tejano program as well. So I just wanted to give you that. And if anybody wants more information, I'll be willing to talk to them after. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Roll call.
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Ms. Hernandez? Mr. Jaramillo?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is general functions, K-3, literacy supports and data.
Good evening, President Crouch, governing board members.
Favor?
Yes.
Could you explain the acronyms and abbreviations that are on the charts as you go through them?
We sure will, because there's a lot of them. And you'll be happy to know that I'm the only item on the agenda, so get ready. No, I'm just teasing. Joining me tonight, Carmen Castro, who is our Director of ELA and ELL, Language Acquisition and English Language Arts. Tonight specifically talking about early literacy, move on when reading, which the acronym, the famous acronym for that is MOWR, M-O-W-R, that you see. So as you probably looked at the deck, there's about 40 slides, right, Ms. Quintero? But a lot of them are sort of background information that we want you to have, where we will, as you see additional questions, we put the legislation in, we put some data that Carmen will also walk through. So some of them we'll go through quickly, but if there's places you want us to pause and go back to, we will do that. So setting up the context, I am going to, you'll be happy to know, I'm going to let Carmen talk through a great majority of the slides, and we'll just be here kind of stepping in and out as we walk through this. Carmen.
Good evening, President Crouch, Mr. Holmes, members of the audience. Very nervous. I don't really like speaking up here, but okay. So this quote that we put up here, I think, really exemplifies what we're trying to do in our district regarding all of our programs, and specifically the formative assessment work that we have going on in the district. And really, understanding that what we're not trying to do is change the child, but address the gaps that they may have to ensure that they're reading by the end of third grade. Are these slides? Okay. So I did put all of the legislation in for your information, although if you don't have any questions about the specific legislation, I will just continue through, right? But it's truly about, this is a K-3 initiative. It is not just a third grade responsibility, where I think many of our third grade teachers come feeling that it's solely on them, but really it's how are we developing literacy skills as soon as we get them in our kindergarten classrooms, and hopefully prior to that, right, with our other programs such as Parents as Teachers. So unless you have questions, I'm going to go through the legislation slides. No? The one thing I do want to address is that we do have to submit a literacy plan for each school. So each school identifies what their plan will be based on the data that our students have when they take the screeners starting in August. So that's the first data point that they design a literacy plan around.
Can that plan be modified during the year?
So we review that plan 3 times a year. So we have a time in August that we start with the data, we submit our first plan by October 1st. February 1st is another review of that plan, and then again on June 1st. So there are 3 points where we have to submit data to the state that is from our FastBridge data assessment. And then at that time, schools meet with either myself or part of our team to review those literacy plans, to look at their data and see what needs to be adjusted. And then we submit that information to the state 3 times a year. So yes, in short, yes, it can be revised. These are the components that need to be part of the plan and that we do submit to the state. We have to have our master schedule where we indicate we have a 3-hour literacy block in K2 and we have a 2-hour literacy block in 3-5. What that time allows us to do is to provide core instruction at grade level, but also allows us to meet individual needs based on where students are in their acquisition of learning how to read. Our curriculum, our EL curriculum, is used K-5, but in particular in K-3, our data system FastBridge allows students to have screeners, our diagnostic and benchmarks. We do it 4 times a year so that we allow to provide that information to the following school year's teacher. So we do test our students again in May so that we can start the school year with that data. Parent notification is a large part of this initiative. We have videos set up that we have parent meetings at the beginning, PTO meetings at the beginning of the year, so parents are well aware of this law. We have letters that go out twice a year, once at the beginning, just notifying all K-3 parents that move on when reading, or if your child is not meeting that certain proficiency at the end of third grade, you have the possibility of retention. We provide additional letters based on how students are performing on benchmarks. So at parent conferences is a typical time that we give that information out to K-3 parents. Yes, sir?
Mr. Crouch? Will there be a safety net maybe in the summertime? for
Yes,
the children?
yes, we do every summer, and I'll get to that in, when our summer school slide comes up.
Just to add to that, I think the other important thing is, so by the time a kid is in third grade, they've heard about this, the parents have heard about this since they're kinder.
Kinder.
So we're not waiting just to talk to third grade parents about this K-3 legislation. We start that conversation in kinder. So they've heard it multiple times by the time their student actually gets to third grade.
So just some examples of the letters and communication that we have for our parents. There's also a student action plan. So if a third grader is falling below the benchmark scores, we send this letter home to parents indicating what sort of interventions are in place for their child. There's also a form if a student is retained in third grade and because of attending summer school, they move on to fourth grade, they have a plan of what's going to happen to that child in fourth grade. So mainly what I did want to talk about are the supports that we are providing for our students and teachers. We offer teaching reading effectively for all of our K-3 teachers. It's a 5-day literacy professional development that gives them the background to understand how to teach students how to read. That's offered to all of our K-3 teachers free of charge. We typically offer that in the summer because it is a 5-day program. We have engaged in the formative assessment work, starting with our kinders on up, and really figuring out how do we meet the needs of our students by looking at what they're doing on a daily basis. So for example, K2 students are involved in what's called a skills block, and that's where they have independent rotations, but there's also the opportunity to meet in small group with the teacher. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Harris.
Is that professional development required for all of the teachers K through third grade?
It's not required, it's highly recommended, and we pay the teachers to attend during the summer through Move On When Reading funds. So there is no cost to the teachers, and they are compensated for their time for being there.
Most of them are.
And almost all of our teachers have gone through the training, and we do have 2 in-house trainers as well, but we typically ask the state to come and provide the training because they just have more experience in providing that. And it allows our program specialists to work in our summer school program. It frees them up for that.
Thank you.
So in third grade, the part that I keep referring to is our summer school program. And in a couple of slides, you would have seen the data of how many students are retained or are targeted for retention after we've removed all of the exemptions. And this past school year, it was 25 students that fell into that category. So what we did is we invited many more students than that. We had about 200 students come to our summer school program. It's a 3-week program, but we followed the model of math lab school this past school year. And so what we did was the teachers had students at the beginning of the day for 4 hours, but what we had in the afternoon was professional development for those teachers afterwards. So what they learned in the afternoon, they were able to then go apply with the students the following school day. So we had the opportunity, or we used the Move On When Reading summer school requirement to provide additional professional development for struggling readers at 3rd through 5th grade. So we invited teachers, not just K-3 teachers, but teachers in 3rd through 5th, so that they have the skill set to address struggling readers in 3rd through 5th grade. That's typically not where the funding allows us to train teachers. But by inviting them to participate in summer school, they have that additional training to support students during what's called all block. It's an additional literacy block.
And in the summer, we had regular ed teachers and some special education teachers who participated in that, so that just kind of helps with the continuity of the program during the regular school year as well.
And so in addition, I'm sorry.
How many classes were held during the summer?
So we had 18 teachers, and they taught in triads, so that you had the ability to watch someone else teach and learn from them, and then making the groups much smaller. So our classes were about 30. We had about 6 to 7 classrooms, but with 3 teachers in each classroom.
And we kept them consistent we use Geico Primary. Instead of typically we spread them out all over the district. That makes it more difficult if you're gonna do professional learning, if you're gonna do follow-up services. So this past year, we grouped them all at Geico Primary.
And
Mr. Davis?
just an additional piece to that. So those same teachers who participated in our summer school training were then providers of professional development on District Wednesdays for their peers in 3rd through 5th grade. So they shared their learning with their peers.
Mr. Davis?
Does the state mandate what books have to be read by what year, or can the students select the books they want to read, or is it just the books that the teacher?
So in every rotation, whether it's in K2 or 3-5, there is a time called additional reading time, and they have that. It's either one week is on the topic that you pick, the other week is self-selected. So it's not always what the teacher is requiring them to read. There is opportunities for student choice in there.
But the state doesn't give us a mandate
no.
of what we have to.
So we have continued to have data discussions on site with each school, as well as helping our teachers become more familiar with what the data is telling them and how to make instructional decisions based on that data. It allows them to plan for the small group instruction so that we're closing the gap prior to them getting to 3rd grade. This is the part I always talk ahead of my slides, I'm sorry. But that's the part where this piece of Move On When Reading Summer School, the lab school that we did, has provided us a unique opportunity to have teacher-led PD as well as to scale the work that we did this summer.
Mr. Holmes?
Mr. Crouch, I just want to remind our governing board, 4 years ago, we made the switch to EL from abandoning a lot of programs that were in place that quite frankly weren't meeting the needs of the standards. I mean, we had in place computer programs where we would just put the kids in hoping that they would just sit there and these are true literacy strategies that our teachers are learning how to teach reading. And so it's a lot of professional development. It is not an easy task. And so when we, showcasing kind of the new model and new design, it comes with a lot of investment in professional learning for our teachers, which kind of gets at why we want to continue to retain our folks, because the cost of retraining this type of literacy experience is really important. This is really diagnostic in nature, where teachers really understand deeply where their students are in their literacy level, right? And there are assessments built into our new literacy design where you have multiple groups of students at different levels, where teachers are accommodating by taking advantage of small group instruction by creating smaller centers where students can actually work individually. And so the sophistication of this design, I don't want to be lost in kind of the details of the data that we're going to jump into, but I just want to remind us of kind of where we've come from, which were highly scripted programs, to much more programs that are more devoted to specifically kind of shifting some of that data. I think the biggest professional development shift for us has been teachers really focusing on small group and really trying to manage students working independently while they're really diagnostically working with students and individual groups. Mr. Crouch, you got a chance to see some of that where students themselves were actually using the iPads to send progress of their work to their parents or to their teacher at that time.
Yes, that was very interesting. I have a question about long-term sustainability, and as we do get some new teachers in the district, is the program set to bring them in or train them as well?
So we have training during new teacher orientation that is already set up and to bring teachers into the curriculum. But then we also have cadre groups that meet after school that we target specifically new teachers so that they have the opportunity to ask questions and continue to grow in their knowledge of teaching students how to read.
We also allow teachers who are switching grade levels, particularly grade bands. If I'm jumping from second to fifth, then I can attend either new teacher or we'll do a before pre-service, sort of do some catch-up so that they're coming in. There's similarities, fortunately, in the K-5 band, but really understanding that difference, you know what I mean, that's occurring within. The other piece, too, that I want to tag on to what Mr. Holmes said is what was missing from 4 years ago was writing. It was just really reading focus. And really wrapping into this is a move on when reading, the legislation exists around reading, but we're approaching early literacy with equal weight on reading and writing and spending. We've shared the Rel West work that we're doing with Los Amigos and Liberty in the past, and really leveraging the writing to support the reading, that it's an actual literacy work, it's not just specific to reading. And that's a switch from where we were 4 years ago.
In addition to training, making sure that all of our new teachers and continuing teachers have the professional development that they need, I've also worked very closely with Dr. Williams in helping to create that continuity of students who do receive special ed services. So we've trained all of the LD resource teachers in the skills block components so that when they walk out to those other services or they're pushed in, they have that continuity of the instructional strategies, because our most critical students need continuity. And that has allowed, that partnership between the two of us has allowed us to train that group of teachers as well. In addition, our instructional assistants, we've had professional development for both our special ed and some of our ELL instructional assistants so that they're able to support teachers through providing small group instruction as well.
And from the design place, when we're doing the summer programming, we're leveraging pieces from EL and those concepts, so we're not creating this kind of parallel, which we've done in the past, which is, okay, let's step out, now we're gonna do this summer program. But we're actually delving deeper. The work is actually around a unit that is no longer part of the current 4 that we're doing, but it's not something that's a totally different thing for either the teachers or the students, because we found in the past when we've done that, there's absolutely no transference. The data has shown when they step back into school, what they did in the summer was so different that they're not automatically making the connection. So from a design point around the summer program, it's digging deeper in some of that work.
So the piece that usually parents ask for or ask about are the exemptions. So I've listed the 4 exemptions that are part of the Move On When Reading legislation. I just wanted to point out, though, that the ELL exemption is for students who have less than 2 years of instruction in English in Arizona. So by the time our ELL students are in 3rd grade, they no longer qualify for that exemption. So unless a student is identified as an ELL student in either 2nd or 3rd grade, most of our ELL students do not qualify for this exemption anymore, because it is a 2-year exemption. Okay? And the special education exemption is not an automatic exemption. The parents and the team on site, the special ed team, have to come together and decide what is best for that student. Is it best to retain the student in 3rd grade or move them forward to 4th grade? Okay. So I just wanted to share with you the percentage of retentions in Arizona and in our own district.
Explain the numbers to me a little bit. I'm having trouble with
So 0.3 of all 3rd graders across the state of Arizona were actually retained based on the Move On When Reading legislation. And I had served on a committee this past school year with the state school board who does want to increase that cut point because they do not feel that we're retaining enough students across the state based on the number of minimally proficient students that we have across the state. So I am preparing that that cut score will raise and that we probably will have more students qualifying for retention in the next year.
So,
Based on
according to my math, and it could be off, is we have a tenth of the students retained.
So it's 1 out of 1,000.
Wouldn't that
Yes.
be 0.1%?
I'm sorry, Maggie, you didn't check my math. Let me blame the director of mathematics.
We had one student retained?
We had 3 students that qualified after attending summer school or not attending summer school, because we can't mandate that a student attend summer school.
And I think 2 of them were 2 that did, of the 25. So it's not the full minimally proficient band either. I think there's a misunderstanding often that all kids who are minimally proficient on AZ merit are held up by the Move On when reading legislation, and they're not.
No.
It's a cut score determined within the minimally proficient of where those kids fall. So of the
Of just the
25,
reading portion as
Of
well, because the ELA AZ merit assessment is both reading and writing. So they tease out just the reading questions, and then if you fall below a threshold of minimally proficient, those are the students that are retained.
Mr. Davis?
I'm having a hard time understanding the numbers as well. Can you
Sorry.
just elaborate? What do you mean by retained? Is it
So-
that the student completed the program?
Can I move to this,
Yes,
the
let's
sheet?
proceed.
So here's
This
the
will
number
help.
of students that were
1%.
that we tested last year, 1,000, as, yes.
No,
This is us, 1,167 students took AZ merit last year. Of those students, 42 did not meet the requirement, that threshold of minimally proficient. So there were more students who were minimally proficient, but they were above that threshold. So we started with 42 students, so that's the 4%, right, that did not meet the requirement. Of those students, 24 of them were not exempt. So from the 24, we were now down to 24 students who were going to be retained. Those are the students that we specifically invite to summer school. And we call the parents, we say if your student does not attend summer school, they will be retained. I don't have another option for you at this time. So the majority of our students do come, and in addition, we service more students. We had over 200 students this past summer. Some of those students choose not to come to summer school, or they move away from our district. And then there was one who did not, because we give them an additional assessment at the end of summer school, which is a fast bridge assessment. And if they have not shown progress in those 3 weeks of summer school, then they are retained. If they make progress during those 3 weeks, we place them in 4th grade with that student action plan of saying, what are the interventions that need to take place for this student to get to reading on grade level? And I'm sure I still didn't answer your numbers question.
Mr. Amir?
Mr. Crouch, of the students that are leaving our district, are they leaving with a recommendation that they get promoted or they be?
They're retained.
Retained.
They're
Whether they're
retained.
here or go to another district.
Because
Correct.
they didn't complete,
Well,
they
that
didn't
come down
meet that
completers.
requirement,
Yeah,
and so we have to send them forth to
Yeah.
the receiving school with that.
Okay.
Do we have any data showing how effective retaining a student is? Or are there studies that show, Mr. Holmes?
Just, can I address it on another slide? Because it's relevant to your question, because I think there's some trends around time that it takes. I think there's a lot of data that suggests that there's some concerns around that, depending on what's going on. But I think there's some supporting data here that I think will get to your question.
I think it's the slide after this one is the one, right? So here's our AZ merit data where we are hovering around 28 and 29% at 3rd grade that are proficient or highly proficient. But if you look at our trends, and I think this is the one that Mr. Holmes was talking about, of the percent passing increases from 3rd to 4th to 5th grade.
Right. So let's Carmen, can you go back one slide real quick? So this is also real important for us to understand, because I think there's confusion around this. When you look at the minimum proficient category, which is the pink category, you see that every year that has shrunk, right? Which is what we want to see. We want to see movement. If you're a minimally proficient student, one of the reasons why the state makes a cut, doesn't say all minimum proficient students have to be retained, is because if you're minimally proficient, it does not mean you can't read. I just want to say again, right? Just because you're minimally proficient does not mean you can't read. Right? This is an assessment that measures writing and reading together. So there's a combination of scores here. That's why the cut score for actually retention is lower than just a minimally proficient. Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear. What to your question on the next slide, as you can see that most students need more time, right? That's a reality. And so retention has a whole nother, I mean, there's social, where they're kids, so there's a lot go in play. And so one measurement really shouldn't be used for retention, regardless of what the opinion is on it. The reality of it, though, is you can see here, we go from 58 percent minimally. This is the same cohort. So I just want to make sure this is not different years. This is the same cohort from 2017 to 2019. Measuring the same cohort, you can see the amount of minimally proficient students dropped by 20% in over 2 years. So what that tells us, I think, as educators, is that students over the course of their K-5 experience actually learn how to read, right? And although we're not happy with 38%, had we retained 58% of the students you could see that they are making progress, right? And so programmatically, we've got better systems in place that require time. And literacy is much more complicated than one period in time at third grade. I asked Ms. Castro to put this together just so we can kind of get a little bit at, it doesn't answer the complete philosophical question about retention, but I think it does speak to, kids do move, and we have data to support that there's some significant movement between fourth and fifth, from third to fourth through fifth grade with the same cohort of students, which gives us a lot more hope that there's some progress being made rather having retained those students.
Can we predict which students will tend to move up? Do we have any?
The students will do what?
Which students will tend to move out of minimum provision from third to fifth grades?
I don't have a predictor for that.
I'm just curious if you had some.
No.
Don't have a
No. We see some shifting from minimally to partially, like we do some analytics that show like categorically who moved there.
We have a profile.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that we do identify students for summer school in third grade is if they score minimally proficient on each of the 3 FastBridge assessments, then we recommend them for summer school. So I have more indicators on how to support students who will need interventions, but not necessarily which ones, the indicators that moving them to the next level.
And just
That makes sense.
because I can't let it go, I actually have a large body of research and data on the effects of retention, or the ill effects of retention. And we do a lot of work also with John Hattie and visible learning, and the effect size on that is actually a negative effect size. So I have tons I'd be happy to share with you at a whole later date, time, and place that's there.
And another thing that we do is we caution our K-2 teachers to not retain quickly in K-2. There's already a measure in third grade to catch students who are not reading. So we don't want to retain students in kinder, first, and second, because then if they happen to fall in this category, they would be retained again.
And we've received some kids from out of district who are actually double retentions.
Right.
Like we'll get them and we'll start looking at their profile and we're like, why is this kid 11? Because they've been doubly retained.
Ms. Couture?
So do you send anything home with the parents during summer school to help the parents help the kids at home once they're home?
Yes. So there are brochures, ideas for them to work with at home, but also during the school year.
Right.
Yes, but in addition, that goes home during summer school.
Cool, thanks.
Mr. Hughes?
To piggyback off of what Ms. Quintero asked, do we also give opportunities for families to either listen in or have some of the material that we provide to teachers that are being taught how to teach reading and
So-
reading?
Each of our schools have literacy nights, and those are components of what do I do with my student at home to support their learning of how to read and write. You know, I don't want to leave that component out of a literacy development, but there are opportunities for parents to practice what they're working on during the school day.
Mr. Crouch, what if the student doesn't have the support at home?
So that's why we do in K2 have a 3-hour literacy
Lit-
block,
okay.
right? We really want to make sure that while they're with us during 6 hours, we do
They are
everything we can to ensure that they're learning how to read with us. It's wonderful when we have that ability to have parental support, but we also have to
Yeah.
not rely on it
On
and
it,
make
right.
sure that we're doing everything we can during the school day.
Also
As
some of our
our
21st
21st century programs, we have a Move On When Reading after-school program at each site. There is an allocation to have a third grade reading tutor at each of our elementary schools during the school year so that we're targeting students prior to summer school.
And now, what if the student has an older sibling that can be of assistant or be able to, is there any training for those?
We have not in the past, but that's a
Okay.
wonderful idea.
Yeah.
And the other data slides is just, I just want you to show you that we are looking at all of our subgroups as well as beyond third grade. We want to make sure that we're following our students beyond third grade. So our FastBridge diagnostic and progress monitoring tool is used K6. So we don't stop at third grade.
So if you go back one, so the first, notice they're just K1 on this one. So you want to explain a little bit about what that early reading says?
So in early reading, we start with concepts of print, being able to identify your letters, names, and sounds. And we start with reading fluency in first grade, so that there are very different assessments of what our students are able to do, read nonsense words in K1, where A reading is more like an AZ merit type assessment, comprehension assessment, where we start that in second grade.
We included the subgroup data just because it's one of the ways we look at it as well. So a lot of these data look the same, but like now what you're seeing is our SPED data in there, like our fall scores. So we've just included additional kind of looks at the data to give you an idea of what we look at as well.
So if you were talking earlier, Mr. Crouch, you mentioned acronyms, right? And this is probably one of the slides, right? Where HR means high risk, some risk, and then low risk, and what the diagnostic calls college pathways. And it's just their highly proficient ranking. But that may have been some of the acronyms that you were asking me about earlier.
And CBMR.
And CBMR is a fluency assessment on how their prosody, number of words they read per minute.
It's kind of the Dibbles.
Type
Yeah,
assessment.
just to kind of give you a blast from the past.
Right. Any questions?
Ms. Dong?
Well, first of all, it seems like you really have the program down well for the entire district. I really love the fact that you're able to get the professional development for the teachers, because it's so critical, especially when it comes to things like reading. Unless they took a lot of classes when they were getting their certification, sometimes some of those things, and even then at the university, what you're doing here, I think, is a lot more in-depth. And so I'm really glad that is happening, and that the students are starting to, that our students are able to really gain from that. And we have very few, from the looks of all the numbers. We don't have a lot of students compared to the rest of the state and other districts. So I think the things that we are doing are really good. We talk about things for the parents, and the majority of our parents are able to take what you're giving them at home and are using it with their students. But I know that there are some times that it doesn't happen. The parents are extremely busy, their jobs, they work until 7 o'clock at night and come home, and, it's just an exhausting evening, and that doesn't always happen. I heard about that this week, from a grandma. You know, she can see from the other children the difference in that, and that this child who's in third grade just isn't able to read at third grade. And she's beside herself because she doesn't know what to do. And sometimes, you know, the daughter isn't paying attention to her, you know, that kind of a thing. But you know, I think that the majority of the parents are willing, but the ones that aren't, we're still catching the students.
Right, we're trying
If
to.
they can't do it at home, what you guys are doing, what your teachers are doing, the professional development that is happening, I think, is capturing these students that don't have as much support as we would like to have. You know, the sibling idea is a great idea, but sometimes there's already so much pressure on some of the siblings that I'm really glad that the majority of this work that is so critical, especially when it comes to reading, is being done in the classrooms with the teachers and the professionals that have been taught how to do all of this. So kudos to you and all of your team
Thank you.
and all the teachers, K through 3, that are, and all of them, you know, because like you said, this still is something that they need in fourth grade and in fifth grade to be able to do with the students, and even in high school, because some students fell through the cracks, kind of thing, or came from another district. You know, that kind of thing. So kudos. This is a fantastic program that you have here. You know, I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of the numbers that you brought to us. So thank you.
Ms. Quintero?
One quick question. You brought up the point about the students and if the parents can't help. And sometimes kids have a lack of knowledge only because either they're dyslexic or they're blind like me and stuff like that. But it took me a while before they figured out I need glasses. So do the teachers look for those clues?
So there is a dyslexia screener that is supposed to come into play. It was supposed to come into play this coming school year, and our reading diagnostic fast bridge has questions that would address that as a screener. Unfortunately, the state's a little behind in its professional development and training teachers or what to look for in that screener. So that won't be implemented until the following school year. So not in 2021, but not until 21-22. But there will be components in our screener that will help identify that particularly, because you mentioned dyslexia.
They also still do a 45-day screen on any, of course, kid who's coming in or new student. And the TAT process, the targeted assistant, teacher assistant teams that look at issues that surface if a classroom teacher sees something or the PE teacher notices something or whatever. So we do some wraparound. We're working with Dr. Williams to tighten those pieces up. But yeah, really trying to catch that as early as we can. Oftentimes in kinder is where, you know, kinder's always like a jack in a box, like you never know what you're gonna get there when they get here. So it's really figuring out what the needs are, and then how do we really identify if there's sped needs or if there needs, you know what I mean, that we need to do. I think the other piece that's been beneficial to us in the past little bit of time is Carmen's team and our team, we spend a lot of time in classrooms, Mr. Crouch went with us, looking at the instruction. So in the past, we've typically done the PD, we roll it out, go in peace, and we'll be over here, right? So it's really us spending a lot of time in classrooms, making sure that what works in theory works in practice. And then how do we make those tweaks? How do we surface what the teacher's needs are? How do we surface, okay, we have a gap in testing. It's one of the ways we switched to FastBridge was because we were in there seeing it, we weren't getting a match from what we are. So that additional piece of actually seeing it in play is really key to helping us identify with teachers in the same way we want teachers to identify some of those struggles.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm done.
I had a question about the U of A, and will they work with us so that they can take some of the methods that we're using in Sunnyside and educate some? No. Okay,
No,
so that's okay.
I went down that dark path. And I basically, I tried it with more than just U of A, by the way, and they said, we're not producing teachers just for Sunnyside. So.
They should be.
That's what I said. I said that very thing. So, yeah, but I mean, it is a place we continue to push. But, yeah.
And by the way, I would be interested in understanding more about retention and the
Absolutely.
effects at some point.
Love. My favorite topic.
Mr. Holmes?
Just briefly, because I want to make sure it's real clear for the general public and our governing board who are looking at our scores. One of the things that we continue to do is iterate and look at what's not working. And what we've have found, quite frankly, in some of the flatlining, is that what we have in place during the skills block for the K-3, we're not holding our folks accountable for, we had not been holding our folks accountable for the small group instruction and using that data that's built into the system. So in other words, we have the FastBridge data, which is what you saw, which is given beginning and then 3 times a progress monitoring tool. In between all those assessments, there are individual assessments that are built into the curriculum, which will tell me whether you're missing short letter sounds, right? I mean, it really is so specific that you have a progression from kindergarten all the way to 3rd grade with individual lessons based upon what level you are on. So it is much more detailed and to a point where those particular skills that are highlighted in the teaching reading effective training are actually lessons that are given in periods of time to move students through these progressions. So you can move from kinder B, where there's right up in there. What we have found was that in the first 3 years of implementation, that was very spotty, quite frankly. And more importantly, there was a lot of whole group instruction because people were really worried about letting the students work on their own while I pulled, Steve and Mr. Jaramillo together, right? I mean, just to actually work on some stuff while the rest, right?
I
And
was in
so,
that group.
but the idea is that they are pulling not students that are in different. Every single student has a level, so every student gets seen in small group. If you're at a lower level, you're going to probably get seen more frequently, right? And so the sophistication of teaching reading and also putting systems in place and holding ourselves accountable to making sure those are being done. So this year, we've taken a more concerted effort to make sure our principals are walking those classrooms and observing not only that it's happening in the classroom, but they're seeing whatever data system the teacher is using to show me where all your students are in their level, and I want to see how they progressed over. And if they're not progressing, usually we want to know how much time is it taking to move on. So those, just as you're visiting classrooms and you're seeing some of that, the accountability part of it really is, show me your leveling chart or whatever term we use, right? Of where every student is in their skill set. And so that's a big focus this year, K-3, which I know will pay dividends long term. Just so I think it's important. I don't think we're happy where we're at. I think what's important is that we're looking at what's working, what's not working, and what's not being implemented the way it should be to make sure that's happening.
The small group in the past was like below, on, or above, right? We always had small group like that. This small group, the expectation, to Mr. Holmes' point, is very targeted to, this group is working on this skill for this chunk of time, not till like February. And then the expectation is when you go in and out, we from the outside, should be able to see and recognize and see that differentiation is occurring. And we have the tools for that. That's built into the curriculum.
And it seems like the students were very engaged in that.
There's building that ownership, it gets back to the student agency piece. And that was a 1st grade classroom of those kids seeing it and using that app to video that and give themselves peer feedback and self-reflection is a built-in piece.
Scratch. Now, is this being implemented in all K through 3, all the schools?
All the schools, yes.
Okay. Now, how receptive were the teachers?
Now
When they-
or 4 years ago?
4 years ago? Well,
I know, because, we had, how many programs have we utilized?
we did have to unify the district. We had schools that were in success for all schools,
Right.
and then we had schools that were doing more of a balanced reading, balanced literacy model. And so with change comes a lot of uncomfortable.
Of
I
course.
think that we have made a lot of progress in the past 4 years in where our teachers are and their confidence in teaching students how to read in a different way. I think we're much farther along than we were in the past.
The other piece
And
that's
it's
key-
working.
Yes. The other key to this is really important is EL, the curriculum that we've chosen, they are true partners with us in EL education. So our teachers give feedback, and they see that feedback. They make changes in their actual curriculum that are reflective of our teachers' input. That's really empowering to a teacher to know that you're impacting national curriculum in that way. And so the partnership that we have with EL is very tight. They're a unique organization. They're not for profit. So it's not like we're buying, you know, Houghton Mifflin, or we're not buying a big box piece. But that choice had to be very intentional, which means the curriculum is very dense. I mean, teachers will, if you ask a teacher, they're going to tell you it's really hard. It's dense, it's deep, it's taken them time to get through. And we've, quite frankly, our team has gotten better about helping navigate that and helping identify. And we're not there yet. I mean, we talked today. We're
Work in
still working.
progress. Yeah. Now, another question. If it's, so you mentioned that it's not being, your question was, is the University of Arizona implementing this, right? Well, to me, it's kind of baffling, because if our legislators say we have to do it, right, and press on, why isn't it part of the curriculum at the University of Arizona?
Because they tell us what to do, but not how to do it, right? And so everyone has everyone that's ever taught, you know, has their own philosophy of literacy and reading, right? Which is part of the issue when it comes to kind of getting uniform. There's just a different philosophical kind of mentality at the university when it regards to reading. And quite frankly, I mean, they only take very minimal courses that are not even going to prepare them for what's at stake.
It seems to me that some of them that we get, they're not totally prepared.
Yeah.
And we have to go the extra mile when it should have been
Yeah.
done a few years back.
Right.
But I want to thank you, ladies, because this is exciting. Okay, I'm happy to see it. Thank you for what you ladies and the whole staff and the teachers are doing. I really appreciate it.
We'll
Thank you.
happily walk any classrooms you want to see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a great presentation.
Okay.
And fast.
Mr. Holmes gave input, would have been even faster.
Ms. Dunn?
I'd like to move that we recess into executive session for discussion of student discipline pursuant to ARS 15-843 after a short 5-minute break.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza? Mr. Crouch?
Aye.
Mr. Hudson?
Aye.
Motion passes. We're going to recess an executive session after a 5-minute break. If you hadn't said that, I would.
I know. Gotta make it a clean motion.
Good job.
executive session. Are there any suggestions for future agenda items? Mr. Hobby?
Yes. Does that have to be a future agenda item, or can it be? Friday report. Right, yeah, so Friday report. I'd like to see what kind of contingency plan we have if, God forbid, we get the virus hit us in the district. Hello. No, what I was asking, Dr. Favela, if we could have, if we have a contingency plan in place, or I thought, just in case the coronavirus hits a district, what do we have in place to do?
We would work with the
Health Department?
FEMA county.
Okay.
with the epidemiologist
Mm-hmm.
and keep us informed. So and with the CDC, we have connections there. So, yeah, that we'd have to then see what that entails.
Okay.
So we could
Oh,
get
you
a
want that in a
Friday.
Friday report, yeah, we necessarily, we don't need an agenda item, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Hi. So, at our neighborhood meeting, there was a developer who wants to build affordable homes off of Nogales Highway and Olive, and I was hoping that we could get a presentation from that David Wall, to present to us his plans.
He said he'd prefer not to until after they get funding.
Correct. However, can we put it somewhere, can we notify him and see when he can present?
Where are these homes going up?
On Nogales Highway and Olive, there's a vacant lot there.
In the
And
corner?
Yeah, you know where the
East-
hot
east
light
co-
is at
East
Nogales.
corner, southeast corner.
Mhm.
Uh,
77 affordable homes.
77, where are they gonna put them?
We're beyond the,
It's,
Yeah.
it's,
That's discussion after the board meeting.
but he said he would present after they got the funding, maybe 2 to 3 months.
It's in 2 or 3 months.
Mr. Holmes, I would like to see us have at least a discussion or an agenda item on service learning or learning service. I'm not sure exactly which way to phrase it. Basically providing our students at the high schools especially the ability to take a class or after school or whatever to do community service type events. Not calling it community service because that has a negative connotation, but something like service learning or learning service with other organizations in the community or and possibly with those organizations in the schools. Ms. Stone?
I would like to see if we could have a short presentation on the census, what we might be doing here in our district, and also how it would have, how the numbers affect us, how they affect our Title I, how they affect our, all the other free and reduced issues, and everything that the census does as far as our school district is concerned.
Any other future agenda items?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
You certainly may.
Second,
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Strong?
yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Hernandez? Mr. Javier?
Yes.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion passes. Good evening, y'all.
First time I see it.